south of Los Angeles, a North American music mecca, no doubt still unwinding from last night's Grammy Awards spectacular. There were lots of standout performances, but one in particular is leading to a lot of conversations today, not just in the States, but around the world. This is Seattle-based rapper Macklemore performing Same Love, a hit song that champions same-sex marriage rights. To push the envelope even further, he didn't just perform it, they turned time on the stage into a mass wedding for straight and gay couples. Actress and musician Queen Latifah officiating the ceremony in front of an audience that clearly found this all very interesting. A bold move for an award show which over the years has often been criticized for being conservative, staid, kind of staying away from political messaging. Joining us now is Chris Steffler, president of Mercury Management Canada. You were watching at home last night, no doubt. Absolutely. What did you think when you saw especially the ceremonies going on?
I thought it was fantastic. I mean, I was there with a couple of friends, and even a couple of them got a little tear in their eye. It's good to see that finally, you know, mainstream music and the Grammys has begun to kind of recognize where our society is really at in California and around the world.
But you know, this is still a very divisive issue in the States, probably more so than Canada, although there are different points of view here too. And I was surprised, the CBS network, often known as being conservative, the Grammys being conservative, I was surprised that they took such a strong stance on this controversial issue. What was your sense of that?
Well, you know what, I think there's probably some pressure, I think really from what's going on in California. I mean, with Proposition 8, you know, just falling last June and July, you know, and Queen Latifah, you know, really is a spokesperson for gay and lesbian rights and women's rights. You know, same with Madonna. Really, she was on the performance as well. And for 20 years, she's been advocating the advancement of femininity in music and in all parts of our culture. So I think it just kind of, the time was right. And I think the Grammys recognized that. And, you know, what better, I think you have a duty if you have a platform to help bring a positive message to do that. And I think the Grammys did a great job of doing that.
I want to ask you about that in just a second, but for our viewers who maybe are not that familiar with this song by Macklemore, who's based in Seattle, just a short drive away from here, actually engaged to a woman from Vancouver. Let's listen to a little bit of his song, because the message in this song is certainly not a subtle one. Let's listen.
For those that like the same sex, have the characteristics, the right-wing conservatives sticking to decision, and you can be cured with some treatment and religion.
So that's a bit of Macklemore. If you listen to the rest of it, you can see it on YouTube. The message always very clear-cut. You said something interesting, Chris. You mentioned that you know, artists maybe have an obligation to speak out on issues. Some would say that artists should entertain, should pay attention to what they're experts on, which is music, and not speak out on controversial issues. What would you say to someone with that point of view?
Well, I'd have to look back in history. You know, if we look at the greatest artists of our time, whether that's symphony or painting, music, it's always meant to influence our culture. And lots of times it's a snapshot of where we're at as a culture, and it's conveyed through music. And I think as a hip-hop artist, Macklemore, you know, is trying to redefine the fact that you can have, you know, a well-thought-of and provocative statement of where we are and not have it the traditional hip-hop tendency to not be so positive.
And, you know, we have only about 30 seconds, so a bit of time pressure here. But what about that? Hip-hop, you know, he calls out hip-hop in this song. What do you think the reaction is going to be to that?
Well, I hope it's one that we respect mutually in the hip-hop industry. I mean, the same week that Jay-Z had some of his lyrics censored in the UK, you know, a guy like Macklemore is winning a Grammy for a song that is positive and conveys a message of you know, inclusiveness. So I hope there's a transition in hip-hop, that you don't have to be that to be hip-hop.
It's great having you in on the show. We talked about Beyonce last time, Macklemore this time. Look forward to your next visit.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Chris Steffler, Mercury Management. We'll be back in an hour's time with more. Well, a pretty bold move for an awards ceremony that in the past has been criticized for being a little bit too staid, a little bit too conservative. Well, to get his view, we brought in a music executive. Chris Steffler is president of Mercury Management Canada.
Thank you.
As you were sitting there last night watching the performance, especially the moment there was that the ceremonies going on, what was your reaction?
Well, I thought it was great. You know, anytime that we can address some relevant public issues in our society at such a broad stage for everyone to see and be reacted to. I think it's great, fantastic.
But you know, some people would say, listen, these are pop music artists. We don't care what their politics are. We just want to be entertained. They shouldn't be doing that. What would you say to someone who has that view?
Well, you know, a lot of these pop music artists have large influence, and I think it's part of their duty, and many of them would agree to, you know, address some of the things that affect us as a society. I know Queen Latifah and Madonna for, you know, decades have been trying to advocate, you know, the advancement of our thinking as a society. So I think it's great. You got to do more of that, I think.
For our viewers who aren't that familiar with Macklemore and the song, I want to play another excerpt because this is a song that doesn't have a subtle message. Its message is right out there for people to listen to. Listen to this excerpt.
For those that like the same sex, have the characteristics, the right-wing conservatives sticking to decision, and you can be cured with some treatment and religion.
So, as I was saying earlier, one of the things that really surprised me is that this happened at the Grammys of all things, not even the American Music Awards.
Yeah.
This is an awards ceremony which historically has not taken these kinds of chances.
Yeah, you're right. I think it's a turning point. I think that, you know, so many times we have an opportunity to really change the path of where, you know, we are as a society, and musicians should, if they have the opportunity, or entertainers should have the opportunity wherever to kind of drive that change. It's happening, you know, rather than watching it on the news, you're watching it on here, and maybe it's getting a different demographic to people to believe in it.
I was thinking about the huge controversy in the United States when Janet Jackson had her wardrobe malfunction. I think it was during a Super Bowl halftime ceremony.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the same kind of outrage reaction to this. So maybe you're right. Maybe it is a turning point. And I suppose in the music industry, people are now thinking, how can we top this? What can we do to be even more interesting and maybe provocative next time?
Yeah, and have it be real and not a sideshow. You know, I think that with the, you know, Janet Jackson, Justin Timberlake, that, you know, it was shock and it was awe and it was kind of a sideshow. You know, this sort of publicity and this sort of a, you know, buzz around what happened is, it's only going to make us better, I think.
One last question. Macklemore in his song calls out hip-hop for being anti-gay, for being, you know, nasty sometimes.
That's right.
What impact do you think the performance will have, particularly on hip-hop music?
Well, I think that everyone should start to look at themselves and look at what message they're sending to kids. I mean, I work with young hip-hop artists and young artists of all, you know, genres, and if they're emulating something that maybe sends a negative message, at some point we have to change that, and you know, it have to instill in these young people that you don't have to be negative to be popular, and actually being positive will gain you a lot more fans. And you know, Macklemore called out everybody in hip-hop and music in general, in the same way that Madonna has done it for decades, and Queen Latifah. You know, Queen Latifah's put it right to the hip-hop artists that they should stop using the B word and this word and that word that degrade women and that degrade, you know, people of color and anything like that. So good. I think it's fantastic.
Chris Steffler, last time we spoke, it was about Beyonce. This time, Macklemore. I look forward to our next conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, too. I appreciate it.